Video games. Nothing was better as a kid than running home from school, forgetting everything you learned that day, and diving into some video games. That is, unless your parents were fools who fell for the ruse of edutainment games. What is edutainment, you might be wondering? Well, it's a combination of the words educational and entertainment, and usually winds up being neither. These games are designed to ease the minds of parents fraught with distress over reports of children being corrupted by video games. After all, in the 80s, arcades were seen as seedy places where gangs hung out, and the 90s had the congressional hearings over sex and violence in video games. Edutainment games weren't meant to replace mature games, but rather level the playing field and show that games could be more than what they were. While Nintendo has dabbled with educational games before, Sega really led the market in the 90s with their Sega Pico, a console designed specifically for younger gamers. Their Sega PC line of games for Windows also included notable educational titles. Of course, none of this would happen without our blue friend Sonic the Hedgehog. I want to get this one out of the way first. Even though it's not actually a game, it's still worth talking about. Sonic Edusoft was a pitch by Tiertex, a British studio who developed numerous games for both the Master System and Game Gear. The game is only a prototype, possibly cobbled together to pitch to Sega, who ultimately passed on the idea. The prototype had impressive visuals, with graphics that resembled the original Sega Genesis game, but on the Master System. Sonic Edusoft features an isometric overworld where the player can guide Sonic to each event. Most events consist of simple math or spelling problems, with Sonic racing against badniks and little animals to see who can solve them faster. The game's pretty repetitive and the mini-games are broken. Had Edusoft been given the go-ahead, I'm sure the wrinkles would have been ironed out. Sonic the Hedgehog's GameWorld was released in August of 1994 for the Sega Pico. The game is a collection of mini-games featuring Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Dr. Robotnik, and is the first game to feature voices for Tails and Amy. This game and the following are both for the Sega Pico, a console for preschool-age kids that didn't have a standard controller. Instead, it used a touchpad with a special tethered touch pen, as well as several colored buttons on the console itself. Cartridges included storybook-like pages that the player can flip to take them to different areas. Sonic's Game World doesn't have much educational value to it, being mostly a series of mini-games. The plot puts Sonic, Tails, Amy, Dr. Robotnik, and the little animals into a family fun center-inspired space. Each floor has a different set of games like Hoops or Car Race. The final page, like all Pico games, features a Sonic-themed art studio where players can free draw. Tails and the Music Maker was released in October of 1994 for the Sega Pico. The focus of the game is to teach kids about music and instruments with Sonic's favorite little buddy, Tails. This game's another Sega Pico minigame collection, which is likely why the Pico isn't popular even among retro collectors. There really aren't any Gunstar Heroes or Monster World 4 type experiences, no cult classics to speak of, unless you're a die-hard Sonic fan who needs these games. Anyways, this is one of the rare American-produced Sonic games. Tails' design in the game is lifted straight from the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon series. The game features all sorts of public domain classical music, and at the end you even get to see Sonic. Sonic Schoolhouse remains the single greatest oddity in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. It was released for Windows PCs in October of 1996. Sonic guides players through his school where the player can answer questions pertaining to school topics, as well as play minigames. Educational games just love throwing minigames at you. The game itself feels like a reskin of Wolfenstein 3D, or an interactive version of the Windows 95 hallway maze screensaver. Schoolhouse is also notable for using assets from the cancelled Sega Saturn game Sonic Extreme. Sonic's character animations were recycled from the cancelled game for Schoolhouse. It's possible the games were meant to be released together. Sega's educational video games were more popular in Japan than anywhere else. The Pico was widely celebrated by American parenting magazines as a great toy for young children, but for whatever reason it didn't take off the way it did in Japan. The Japanese public embraced the Pico, and the console would receive support until the mid-2000s. The Pico even received games from rival company Nintendo's Pokemon franchise. Sega took a different approach to educational games in the 2000s by forming a partnership with Leapfrog. This deal resulted in 2 Sonic games released exclusively for the Leapster and Digi handheld consoles. One of the 2 games was based on the hit anime series Sonic X, while the other is a generic educational game featuring graphics from Sonic 1.